Good evening, New York and Atlanta. Good afternoon, Los Angeles and Las Vegas. I'm Dmitry Glinsky. I will not be introducing myself in much detail, as you can find my bio on our website. But I'm delighted to welcome all of you at yet another roundtable on behalf of our New York-based Russian-speaking Community Council, RCC, and our nationwide American Russian-speaking Association for Civil and Human Rights. Founded over a decade ago, our organizational network is by now the oldest community-based institution led by immigrants, refugees, and exiles from former Soviet countries, working with other diasporas for immigrant rights and immigrant justice for ourselves and for all, and bringing our own distinctive accents to this struggle. And we've been doing this in spite of considerable challenges, including the silencing the media, attempts to suppress our voices, both inside and outside of our community. I'm glad to see here my colleagues. Let me introduce them briefly. I saw here Igor Kokarev. Igor is the vice chair of the board of our association, a native of Ukraine, former elected official in Moscow, scholar, writer, and the head of our Los Angeles branch. And also my here is Dmitry Ilyushin, who is a native of Russia like myself, where he was a lawyer and he just recently passed the bar exam here in New York. He is a vice president of RCC and our liaison to the United Nations. Russian speaking is part of our historic pre-war name, somewhat equivalent to Russophone or Hispanic, but we proudly count the speakers of Ukrainian, Armenian, and other languages among our co-founders and leadership, as we have held an open tent for all of them from former Soviet countries. For over a decade, we have been engaged in advocacy and organizing for refugees, political exiles, and other immigrants from former Soviet countries, speaking out against autocracy and aggression, and for immigrant rights and human rights, both in our homelands in the US. We do not separate one from the other. We do not think that the war in Ukraine and repression in Russia can be stopped, or that even legal immigrant rights can be protected if we end up failing protecting democracy in the United States. And that means for us, upholding Franklin Roosevelt's four freedoms, including the freedom from fear, which is perhaps the most relevant today for so many people here in the US, from recent arrivals all the way to some of the US senators. It's not our primary purpose today, but by convening to discuss these issues, we are helping to uphold that particular freedom. Our RCC is the immigrant rights arm of our network. In this capacity, it has been a member of We Are All America Refugee and Immigrant Leadership Table, a member of the NGO Committee on Migration affiliated with the United Nations, a participant of the civil society consultations around the Global Forum for Migration and Development, and is a member of New York Immigration Coalition. In all this forum, for all these years, RCC has been the one and only voice of refugees and exile from our part of the world, advocating for our as well as all other law-abiding immigrants. Including the exile community, has been often dominated by other kinds of interests and worldviews, thereby largely insulated from others, but it has also been true the other way around, which ultimately weakens all of us. And I'm spelling this out because I'm convinced that we are in our present condition largely because we've allowed ourselves to divide us by race, origin, other factors, and we must find ways to overcome these divisions if we want to move forward and have changes for the better. Even though I'm not a Catholic, I'd like to share the words of the late Pope Francis from his apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium. To speak properly of our own rights, we need to broaden our perspective and to hear the plea of other peoples and other regions than those of our own country. Our nationwide association has been focused on speaking for political prisoners in Russia and other former Soviet countries, protesting the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine, developing our one and only anti-war dialogue between Ukrainians and Russians in the diaspora, and taking part in collective initiatives in defense of American democracy, which is quite a bit, isn't it? Since the start of the pandemic, we moved from in-person conferences to online roundtables. Past 4 years, we held 25 of them, with participants joining us from 20 countries of the Americas, Europe, including from Ukraine and Russia, the Middle East, Australia, and New Zealand, with speakers that counted among them the leadership of the Nobel Prize-winning Memorial Society, Transparency International, the Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group, a speaker from the State Department, and many others. We are now welcoming you to its another installment, which is also part of our anti-war dialogue in the diaspora, focused on the everyday lives of ordinary Ukrainians and Russians, forced to flee from their countries because of Putin's war. We cannot help governments negotiate their way out of this impasse, but we can help our people at the grassroots to help each other, and to rediscover our shared humanity. Our focus today is on the humanitarian parole and parolees in the US, especially the recipients of the United for Ukraine Youth for You program that has been frozen by the new administration, and the individual parolees from Russia who had their paroles terminated. But since the recent actions taken against parolees in general have in other countries, we are bound to discuss them as well and to consider what has been happening to them. And we are fortunate to have their community workers among our speakers today, thanks to our partners in this endeavor from the New American Pathways. The number of people on parole grew to over 400,000 in the fiscal year 2024. The largest share of them were Haitians, 130,000, followed by Ukrainians, 73,000. That's for last year data. And we'll hear about each of these groups today. The total number of Ukrainians on parole as of today is over 200,000 people. This is more than a half of the entire Ukrainian-born population in the United States, where American communities serve. In comparison, the total number of Russian asylum seekers paroled in the US at the border in the past 3 years was minuscule, slightly over 2,000 people, but these are still individuals in mostly dire circumstances, and we cannot disregard them. Executive order issued in the first days of this administration called for the termination of all so-called categorical parole programs that would be found contrary to its policies, specifically singling out the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan program CHNV. In February, the government froze indefinitely the processing of all applications for all immigration benefits by current parolees admitted under several programs created since 2007 under both Republican and Democratic administrations, for citizens of several Latin American countries, more recently for Afghans fleeing from the Taliban, and for Ukrainian refugees from the Kremlin invasion. This put on hold thousands of their applications for reparole, temporary protected status, or asylum. The administration also announced the termination of the CHNV program. In response, 15 parolees from the groups affected by these decisions, including 4 Ukrainians, have sued the administration. Lawsuit is led by lawyers from the Justice Action Center in LA and Human Rights First in New York. 2 weeks ago, the court ordered a stay on the revocation of parole and work authorizations for CHNV recipients, but it has not yet made any decisions on Ukrainians or the rest of the lawsuit. At the same time, the administration revoked the parole of those who were granted it after going through CBPOne appointments on the border. And this includes a few thousand of asylum seekers from Putin's Russia and other post-Soviet autocracies. In mid-April, many Ukrainians paroled through Youth for You program also received notices that their parole was being revoked, but the administration soon retracted these notices, saying they were sent by mistake. We, of course, cannot remain indifferent to all this. This is both a humanitarian and political issue impacting our pursuit of better human rights conditions in our native countries. First, the war in Ukraine is not about to end. The Putin regime has built a war economy, and even a ceasefire, if it gets negotiated, will not prevent it from striking again. And as genuine refugees from autocracies and aggression are losing or may lose the right to be in the United States or the opportunity to improve their status, they may end up straight in the hands of their likely persecutors, who are already celebrating this as a victory that eliminates the option of fleeing to the US as a viable alternative to accepting their rule. So what practical advice can immigration lawyers provide to parolees under these circumstances? And what long-term solutions should be developed for those people and families from various countries that have relied on their parole as a stepping stone to safety, given that there is no end in sight to the war in Ukraine, nor to the political repression in Russia, Venezuela, or other countries with similar regimes, which are, by the way, closely connected with each other. To help answer these questions, we, of course, have here a very impressive group of speakers, and I will start with our Vladimir Gutsaluk is the head of the immigration law firm in Las Vegas. He has practiced immigration law for over 20 years and worked in Kyiv for the global law firm Baker & McKenzie. Vladimir is a member of the Oregon Bar Association and of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. 2 years ago, he made a major contribution to editing our legal handbook for asylum seekers from former Soviet countries in Russian, and we're always grateful when Vladimir finds time to join us for legal advice. Now is his turn to share his remarks.
Okay, well, hello everybody. Dmitry, thank you for your nice introduction. So you kind of summarized nicely what has transpired over the last few months. after Mr. Trump became president again. And obviously these questions that we're about to discuss, or we started discussing, it's something that immigration attorneys like myself hear pretty much daily from clients, prospective clients, etc. Right now, I guess one good word to use would be uncertainty, and that's what we feel like happening in the immigration area overall, and not only vis-a-vis the Ukrainians, as Dmitry already pointed out. USCIS basically paused. They using the word, I guess, administrative pause for all TPS, asylum, adjustment of status, and other migration benefits for parolees, which is in case of Ukrainians. So it's U for you. That's the name for the program. But at the end of the day, the person gets paroled in. So what the nature of parole overall? Parole is basically somebody is allowed to be in the United States for a temporary purpose. It does not confer any additional immigration status as such, as opposed, for instance, for TPS, and oftentimes they overlap TPS and parole. But the gist of this announcement, which was actually we learned about this after the original memo, which I guess was issued back in February. If you're in the United States, you could be either admitted or paroled in, or basically present without being admitted or paroled. So parolees, they're not admitted, they're just present here pursuant to this parole. They didn't take parole from U4U people who came using the U4U program. It hasn't been done. It's only temporary pause right now. However, all the applications and everything else what was filed by people who came in as U4U right now is on a pause. What it means is that immigration officer cannot, in theory, issue a final decision on the case until this pause is lifted. Again, it's supposed to be only temporary. And again, when I use the word uncertainty, because nobody knows what's, I don't have to say the current administration is rather unpredictable with its actions and statements. So we don't know what the actual decision will be. However, there are some types of cases that as an immigration attorney, I will say it doesn't really matter, because that would be a violation of the law. If, for instance, right now, some of the parolees, and I have these cases myself. For instance, somebody entered on U4U, correct? And the person then marries a US citizen. The parole is sufficient for this person to apply for what we call adjustment of status. So regardless of what decision will be made about U4U, I will argue that somebody who has already been paroled in, whether it's part of U4U or different parole program, doesn't really matter, because the person has been paroled in, and if this person applies for adjustment of status as an immediate relative of US citizen, let's say based on marriage to US citizen, okay? So it's this absolutely 100% legitimate basis to apply. We've done this many times. So, and I know for sure that one type of application, whatever they want to decide, they will have to approve these cases. Why? Because you are paroled in, and it's a sufficient basis to file for adjustment of status as an immediate relative, which would be parents of U.S. citizens, if U.S. citizen 21 and older, spouses of U.S. citizens, and unmarried children under 21. Okay, so for them, they shouldn't be affected, even if temporarily it's on pause. In fact, we had one case approved after they already announced this pause, and then we received approval and actually green card for somebody. I don't know whether it was some kind of how it happened, but it did happen. So they paused TPS applications as well. A few days before Biden left the office, he renewed TPS for Ukraine. So now we have an interesting situation. So TPS for Ukraine is renewed through October of 2026. They put this pause saying like, okay, we renewed TPS, but we can't approve it yet. Although, like I said, I'm aware of one situation that when USCIS was sued over this TPS just recently, and clients got approved through October 2026. During this time, with this pause has still in effect. So how much longer is gonna last, we don't know. But again, what I'm trying to say that this is only temporary. Some applications shouldn't be affected no matter what happens, perhaps a small number. Other people, those who decide to stay, obviously looking for other options. One of them to consider would be application for asylum, which I'm very kind of sensitive about this, and as a strict legal matter, the fact that there is a war going on in Ukraine, unfortunately, that's not sufficient just as a kind of blank reason to apply for asylum. So asylum will still have to be, why somebody would have to think twice before filing this application for any application for asylum, not to like cross this line, which is, well, it's actually quite a bright line, frivolous application. So because you cannot just, okay, I'll file just an application and then see what happens. You would have to show some fear. There would have to be some connection to your government of your country. And the fact that why people from Ukraine, it's not as easy to get an asylum, even if the war is going on, because again, asylum is not designed as a mechanism to be like open-ended for everybody, let's say, from a country that there is a war going on. That's why there is programs like Parole program for people temporarily to be in the United States, for instance, which for unknown reason, well, we can guess the reasons. The current administration is kind of, I guess, has issues with. With asylum, you would still have to show connection to the government of Ukraine, that your government can't or unwilling or unable to protect you, one of the protected bases. One of the reasons for asylum, which is used right now, that actually would be claim of genocide. I mean, there's plenty of proof to show that the Putin regime, that their real purpose is to basically destroy Ukraine, to remove Ukraine from the political map of the world, so to speak, and basically kill Ukrainians kill us as an ethnicity. So that's a pure genocide, and some are using this basis to apply for asylum. So again, asylum is absolutely available. People do know that one of the requirements for asylum is to file within 1 year of physical entry into the United States. However, if somebody has status right now, like if we're talking about people who came with U4U, which there would be parolees, they're in parole right now, so that shouldn't be an issue even if you file, let's say, after the parole program is terminated, because you've been in status before it works in practice. I can tell you from my experience. But yeah, so asylum, something that it's always could always somebody could consider filing, although one needs to be careful with this. There are two types of asylum applications. One is called affirmative asylum. That's when, let's say, person right now is in status or no status, but he is not, let's say, in immigration court in removal proceedings. Then this application for asylum would be filed through USCIS. It would be called affirmative asylum application. At some point, the applicant would be called for the actual interview at the asylum office, and we don't know how soon it's going to be. Back in 2018, was for 1 year or a couple of years right before the pandemic, they introduced the system last in, first out. So they were doing, people who would apply for asylum, they would absolutely within 60 days would have their interview. And then pandemic happened, and now there are some cases still waiting for 10 years. There are some cases that called in 1 year or so. So we don't know how soon the applicant would be called for the actual asylum interview. Meanwhile, it's a known fact, the applicant can apply and get their employment authorization document while waiting for the interview. So again, but asylum, what I would call it's like all in, basically. If you file for asylum, that's going to be, first of all, may take a long time for the case to be resolved, number one. Number two, you don't know when next time you're going to be able to travel, because with asylum you're not going to be able to get some kind of travel document, and again it could be years and years before you're able to present your case before an asylum officer. One needs to be careful right now with this increased activities with immigration enforcement. Some Ukrainians could be unfortunately subjected to this, or they could be considered for this expedited removal. If they pull the parole and all of a sudden there were 200,000 people out of out of status. So if somebody had been in the United States for less than 2 years out of status, they can consider this person for expedited removal. Okay, so without even immigration judge, just immigration officer. Now, if somebody already an applicant for asylum, then they can't remove them before the asylum applications are adjudicated. They can obviously put this person in immigration court. The judge would have to consider this application, but again, that's one more reason that somebody might want to consider applying for asylum. If there is like enough basis for this, it should also more or less I'm not saying guarantee from being deported, in a way. So this is something to keep in mind right now. Nowadays, people who already had TPS. So when they applied for renewal right now and they file for renewal of their employment authorization document, they will get automatic extension through TPS. Even if TPS is still pending, if there is a pause, you do get automatic extension for 540 days. But again, each case needs to be considered separately. We do not expect, unfortunately, I guess there was a bill introduced I want to say the 23, if I'm not mistaken, Ukraine Adjustment Act was kind of modeled on this Cuban Adjustment Act, that people after 1 year who paroled in from Ukraine could apply for permanent residency, basically to get green cards. But it was obvious from the get-go, there was like no support for that bill. It didn't go anywhere, and given the current political climate, we don't expect any legislative fix which would somehow help people, let's say, Parolees or from Ukraine, who would be able somehow to apply and become permanent residents in the United States. I don't expect any such legislative fix within in the near future. Let's put it this way. So I don't know. I kind of covered what's kind of main issues, I believe. So perhaps it would be easier for me just kind of to answer questions.
Right. Yes, there are some questions in the chat that maybe you can answer within the next a few minutes. I think the first one is in Ukrainian.
There's a first question was Yulia Myers was in Ukrainian, and basically the question is that somebody who here on U4U and this person does not have TPS, can they apply for adjustment of status in the United States, or they need to step outside the United States for the interview in case of DV lottery, basically selection? So this one I think I can enter easily. So there's this whole question about, yes, adjustment of status and who would be eligible. I just gave one example, one situation which is 100% covered by law, regardless of what they're doing right now, okay, that somebody is paroled in, okay, and then they become what we call an immediate relative of U.S. citizen, okay? So like I already described who those people are. In this kind of situation, people, even if they entered over U4U, and even in practice, even during the big war, I already had several cases. They can file for adjustment of status only as immediate relatives. If somebody won this DV lottery, entered on U4U, no TPS, it's not even a question. The person would have to step outside the United States and go for their interview at the U.S. consulate, wherever it's scheduled. In Kiev, Ukraine, actually, they started issuing immigrant visas right now. So unfortunately, in this kind of situation, there is no chance to do this in the United States through adjustment of status, because there are two ways to apply for a green card as two different procedures or two different processes. One is called adjustment of status. That's when somebody applies here in the United States without having to go anywhere. Okay, and the other one is called consulate processing. That when the applicant applicant would have to appear, like I said, at the U.S. consulate. If it's from Ukraine, most likely it's going to be in Kiev, unless they're scheduled somewhere in Europe, okay? And then the applicant would get a so-called immigrant visa, which is when you enter, you're admitted and you become permanent resident at that moment. Yeah, but in this case, it would have to be, somebody would have to travel outside. There's a question actually, what protection does TPS currently provide to Ukrainians? Is there a risk that TPS might be terminated if the US administration changes? What will happen to Ukrainians whose TPS is still pending if humanitarian parole is cancelled? Is it possible to maintain a pending TPS status while also extending humanitarian parole? What are China's recommendations? So basically, to answer this question, so TPS and parole, basically two different statuses, if you will. Okay, people oftentimes would have both, and I would recommend those who can, absolutely. Let's say when the only U4U was introduced, we knew that to get some benefits, some insurance, etc., it was only part of parole program. So that's why often people would get parole, and well, I mean, they would be in parole and they would also apply for TPS. TPS is actually this status, temporary protected status, is actually regulated by, it's in the INA, Immigration Nationality Act. It does give you protection basically from what Ukrainians have, as anybody else who in TPS would have, is basically temporary protected status of the United States. Government cannot remove this person from the United States, cannot deport the person from the United States. In fact, I can give you an example. One country that's a good example of a TPS, which already had it for more than 20 years, El Salvador. It's a known fact that when TPS was introduced for people from El Salvador, some of them already had final orders of removal. And then even having final orders of removal, but if you have TPS, you can still obtain a travel document. And I know myself clients who would have final order of removal with TPS from El Salvador. They would travel and come back, no issues. I read this question, if there is the TPS might be terminated. Yes, there's always risk that TPS may be terminated. And I'm not going to be overly surprised if TPS is terminated for Ukrainians, although that would be absolutely horrible because there is no justification. What, everything is fine in Ukraine, everybody is ready to go back. I mean, it's I don't have to explain this one, but I'll give you an example. As you may know, I think it was January 18th of this year or 17th, just literally two or three days before Biden's last day in office, okay? And he renewed, as you remember, extended TPS for Venezuela. And what did the Trump administration do once when he got inaugurated? On the 22nd, they just removed this TPS for Venezuela. So, I mean, the same would happen to Ukraine, although I think, Ukraine is a bit different from Venezuela right now. So it is possible that, let's say, if they cancel the whole humanitarian parole for Ukrainians who already have it, but they already have TPS, those have TPS, then they will rely on their TPS. If they decide to cancel both parole and TPS, that's a different issue. It is possible in theory that parole is canceled, but TPS still, available, and TPS would still protect these people. Yeah, it is possible to maintain pending TPS, extending humanitarian parole. That's what people have been doing. And if it's, my recommendation would be keep doing this if it's available. If it becomes available or it's still available, both TPS and parole, absolutely. You just renew both. Yeah, I already kind of answered some of these questions. All of those programs and options currently exist for Ukrainians. Okay, so yes, all of them do exist. So oftentimes the question only, not even if it's available to you or not, it's only a question whether you'd be eligible for adjustment of status, whether or not you have to travel outside the United States. For instance, employment-based adjustment of status. Okay, somebody gets a foreign labor certification approved, okay, so EB2 or EB3, okay, and then the question becomes, can somebody, unlike somebody who marries a US citizen, correct? less person trying to get their green card through work, okay, through employment. So the question becomes, can they, after approval of immigrant petition I-140, whether they can apply for adjustment in the United States? Most cases, the answer is no, unless they had TPS, obtained a travel document, and left the United States and entered using this TPS travel document. Then there's no questions, okay? So again, all of these options available. Oftentimes, it's the question is it available to adjust your status or change your status, depends on what it is in the United States, or you have to step outside the United States. Has the United for Ukraine program truly been eliminated, or there are still possibilities for extensions of the renewed participation? There's always possibility. Right now, the way I understand it, it's just on pause as well. So nobody can apply, and they can keep it like this for the next 4 years. Who knows? Or perhaps something will change, and perhaps they will reopen. Perhaps they will modify it. We do not know.
Megan O'Keefe is a senior coordinator for Ukrainian services at the New American Pathways in Atlanta. She's a dedicated advocate for immigrants and refugees, and Megan has worked closely with displaced individuals and families seeking safety and stability in the U.S., particularly humanitarian parolees. In her capacity as a case manager, Megan brings a nuanced understanding of immigration pathways, systemic barriers, and the urgent need for equitable policy reform. Megan holds a Master of Social Work from Silberman School at the Hunter College.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I just want to quickly say, thank you to the fellow panelists, to Dimitri, and especially to Miss Mariia Yatsko for the opportunity to participate in this discussion on the Humanitarian Parole Program. Thank you for the introduction. I have been a case manager. I was brought on in 2022, and in my capacity, I have served humanitarian parolees from Cuba and Haiti. My primary familiarity is mostly serving Ukrainians. And tonight I wanted to share a little bit about my experience supporting those who arrived through humanitarian parole, some of the challenges, and some ways that we can continue to support humanitarian parolees today. You very well are aware of the humanitarian parole program that was established for Ukrainians in 2022. Roughly 240,000 Ukrainians have been welcomed to the United States since then. And this program provided temporary protection and permission to work in the United States. As we've already talked about, recently, everyone has seen the changes that were brought about in 2025 with the transition in the new administration. And I want to highlight that particularly the executive order that suspended the refugee admissions program and has left thousands of refugees stranded abroad, and also leaving those who entered through a temporary parole program unsure of their future in the United States as well. Uniting for Ukraine was paused in January. In February, there's a hold on all USCIS requests for all parolees. In March, the parole program for Cuban, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans was announced that it was terminated, and they had 30 days to leave. And then in April, some of our clients started seeing a termination of parole emails suggesting to leave the country immediately. And so this, as you know, has caused a great deal of uncertainty and fear, not only in the Ukrainian community, but also in our Haitian community as well. There's escalating gang violence in Haiti, but the administration announced parole termination, not a pause, and gave 30 days to leave, despite the fact that those parolees enter the country here with a legal status. Some impacts that we have seen on the front lines is that clients are not able to apply to extend their work permits. Their parole status is expiring, and the hold on USCIS applications is leaving all parolees without a way to move forward. That also includes government-issued IDs and driver's licenses. For me, this level of uncertainty, highlighted by the uncertainty in home countries and violence and unrest in home countries, it is truly devastating, and it has affected families in various ways. So for families who have children, will they have stability? Will they be able to maintain stability for their children? Many adult children brought their parents, and there's uncertainty around seniors who have recently arrived to the country. And for other parolees, whether or not family members have the ability to be together. A lot of what I've seen is that families arrived to reunite with extended family here in the United States, whether from Ukraine or from Haiti or Cuba. Additionally, our communities are being impacted in schools, employers who are relying on their employees, the community of neighbors and faith communities. It's not just a direct impact on clients, but on all of us who have welcomed and who have formed the community around. So in my work, I've served hundreds of families, and clients are becoming employed. They have dutifully studied English, and they're integrating into their communities. And many men are becoming truck drivers. They've lost. They're at risk of losing their ability to work without their work permits and without driver's licenses. Other families have found work in retail or in factories. Some parolees have become colleagues and are supporting newly arrived refugees from all over the world. And not to mention a number of entrepreneurs who have created their own businesses here and found success in carpentry and cabinetry making, car repair. And one highlight is that a local bakery opened last year in the Atlanta metro area, bringing pastries from Ukraine to our neighborhood. The contributions that not only humanitarian parolees, but refugees and immigrants are making here is innumerable, and our economy would be remiss without them. What are the next steps? Stay informed, continue to build capacity and build community in your neighborhood. Draft a petition, create a petition, amplify your voice, put it out there, get as many signatures as you can. And Also, information hygiene. Make sure that the information that you have is accurate. If you have a local resettlement agency, you can refer to them for support and for resources and for reliable information. And I have here just a sample letter that we can write to our representatives, encouraging them to remember humanitarian parolees and to offer help and guidance in protecting their individuals and families who are here. And finally, I want to close with E pluribus unum, which means out of many, one. I have worked in welcoming services for almost 3 years, and I have not been persecuted. I have not fled a war, but the fact that the United States has pathways where people can come from all over the world and be here safely is a great source of pride for me. And I want to highlight that a diverse nation can come together to achieve a common purpose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Megan, for this very important and detailed presentation. And we are actually, it moves us to action, to what we are going to do. Before we move to our next speaker, who really sparked all this conversation and is the real reason we are all here today. I just want to let you know, folks, that we invite everyone, anyone who is supportive or who can either to support us or to pass the message to others. And I put the link. I will not take your time to share the screen. I just put the link in the chat to our website of our 501c3 flagship organization in New York. And we always appreciate support. And now we are going to Mariia. And I have to say that for those of you who will ask some allergy ask question, is this the right time? Is this going anywhere? Will this help people? I'm deeply convinced that what Mariia will tell you is precisely something that needs to be done right at this time, because if we wait for better times, lots of people will suffer, and these better times may not arrive if we don't plan for them. So Mariia Yatsko is a Ukrainian community builder, a member of the Refugee Storyteller Collective, member of the New American Advisory Council of the Coalition of Refugee Service Agencies in Georgia, and IDA, she will tell what IDA is, program specialist. So a lot of titles for someone who has been in this country recently. She is a Ukrainian humanitarian parolee, refugee advocate, and community leader based in Atlanta. Originally from Kharkiv, the city that I visited last time in the previous century, the city that has suffered so much in this war. She arrived in the US through the Uniting for Ukraine program and now supports fellow newcomers as an IDA program specialist. Prior to displacement, Mariia spent over a decade in Ukraine's industrial sector, leading quality management and certification departments in the oil and gas industry, a career grounded in precision, accountability, and integrity.
Thank you so much, Dmitry, for introduction and for inviting me and giving me a chance to do this speech. Thank you all for being here tonight and joining this important conversation. Today, I'm speaking with you not as a representative of any organizations, but as someone who has experienced what it means to live in a new country with an uncertain future, and as someone who wants to be part of solution. I'm also the person who launched a petition asking Congress to consider creating a pathway to permanent residency for individuals like me, people who came to the United States under humanitarian parole and who want nothing more than to live with stability and contribute fully to the country they welcomed them. There are over 8,400 parolees in the United States today, including people from Ukraine, Afghanistan, Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. Many of us are working, paying taxes, supporting our families, and giving back to our communities. Yes, Yet we do this without knowing what our future here will look like. Humanitarian parole is temporary by design. It gives people time and safety, but not a long-term plan. That's where many families are stuck. They can't go back to where they came from due to conditions they didn't choose, and they can't move forward here without permanent legal options. The petition I started is not political. It is not about blaming anyone. It is about asking for clarity, compassion, and a path forward. Here is what it proposes. Allow those on humanitarian parole to apply for permanent residency after a set period and background check. Ensure equal access to these opportunities regardless of nationality. Update immigration law so it can respond to today's humanitarian challenges, including wars, disasters, and other crises. Encourage public awareness and support because these issues affect real families, not just case numbers. Let me say clearly that it's not just a legal matter, it's deeply human. People want to feel secure. They want to know they can work, raise children, and plan a future. When family lives in a constant uncertainty, it affects their well-being and their ability to fully participate in society. It's also important to understand that this issue is not limited to any one nationality. That's why I'm proud this event brings together people from multiple communities. Whether someone is from Ukraine, Russia, Cuba, Haiti, or anywhere else, the need for safety, fairness, and stability is universal. During the past year, I have been growing cooperation between different diaspora communities. That gives me hope, not because we agree on everything, but because we agree on what matters most, protecting people from harm and helping each other build new beginnings. I also want to thank those who have shared the petition, added their voices, or simply helped others understand what humanitarian parole really means. Your support has brought attention to a conversation that is often invisible, and that is a big first step. We also know this is an issue that impacts the economy. Immigrants and parolees contribute significantly in taxes, labor, and local investments. According to the data in 2022, immigrants in the United States earned over $2 trillion and contributed almost $850 billion in taxes. These numbers are powerful. They show that supporting people legally also supports the country as a whole. There is also historical precedent. In the past, United States has offered long-term solution to individuals who arrived during global crisis. The Cuban Adjustment Act of 1966 is one of these examples. It allowed thousands of people to integrate fully, and it really worked. Countries like Canada has successfully implemented pathways for people fleeing violence and upheavals, providing them with opportunities for permanent residence. The United States, as a global leader, must ensure it upholds its reputation by adopting similar measures to meet international standards in humanitarian efforts. Tonight, as we discuss legal pathways and practical options, I encourage everyone, where you have been an advocate, legal expert, or community member, to stay engaged. These are complex issues, but when we bring together knowledge, compassion, and community, progress is possible. So what can you do? If you support the idea of a more stable path for parolees, I invite you to sign and share my petition. Talk to your networks. Help keep the conversation going respectfully, thoughtfully, and with hope. Thank you again for your time. your openness, and your belief that solution can be built when we come together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mariia, for this quite powerful statement and for actually reaching out and initiating this conversation, which I think is very valuable from many points of view. And it's indeed an extension of our dialogue between the two diasporas, which we have been working so hard and painstakingly and with a lot of resistance to develop, because it's really about people helping people to survive where we can, and that is in the United States primarily. And just something that I would like quickly to add to what Mariia said, being by one of my previous trainings over back in my native country, historian, I looked into the precedents. And for those who say, maybe say that this is unrealistic or impossible or unlikely to happen in this particular circumstance that we are facing today, I would like to share with you that Parolees in the past in the United States have been granted path to permanent residency about 8 times, at least 8 times that I counted. And Eden, of course, will mention more about the Cuban Adjustment Act, but it started with the Hungarians. And I will mention quickly those 8 instances, because these are also some of the communities that have these memories, that have immigrants, and that might not be indifferent altogether to what Mariia and others propose. It started with the Hungarians after the Soviet invasion of Hungary in 1956. For the first time, the administration at that time, it was in the hands of the Attorney General, used the Parole authority to let in about 30,000 Hungarians. Not a lot by present standards, but it was the first time ever that people let in on parole were granted within 2 years. Permanent residency by Congress, and that was an act signed by Republican President Eisenhower. After that, in 1960, Fair Share Refugee Act passed the World Refugee Year, also gave about 5,000 Parolees permission to a path to permanent residency, actually right together at the time when they were let in with a provision to give them permanent residency. And that program was extended for a total of 5 years, up to 1965. In 1965, Hong Kong Chinese came. About 15,000 refugees who fled from communist China to Hong Kong were paroled into the United States, and the amendments to the Immigration and Naturalization Act passed at the time allowed them to adjust to permanent residency. 1966, Cuban Adjustment Act, I will skip that because I think Eden will add more to that. 1977, Vietnamese and other Southeast Asians, after the Vietnam War, the way it ended after the takeover of Saigon by the North Vietnamese Communist Army, about 130,000 Parolees, that's already a number closer to our days, were let into the United States. And in total, about 300,000 Southeast Asians were paroled in the 5 years between 1975 and 1980. But only in 2001, so it took some time, but in 2001, Congress authorized the adjustment of status to all those who were paroled before 1997, the adjustment of status to green card. 1980, the Refugee Act also allowed blanket adjustment of status to permanent residency for all refugees who were paroled to the US prior to this act being passed. The 7th time was 1986, the Immigration Reform and Control Act, actually passed by Republican majority in the Senate, Democratic majority in the House, and signed by Ronald Reagan. And it provided for legalization for former Parolees. And finally, in 1990, religious minorities from Soviet Union and the Baltics, the so-called Lautenberg Parolees, because that was part of the Lautenberg Amendment, passed thanks to Senator Frank Lautenberg, allowed several religious categories, including Jews, evangelical Christians, Ukrainian Orthodox and Roman Catholic Christians, and some others, to adjust to permanent residency after 1 year, 1 year in the United States. And that parole program lasted until 2011. So there are precedents. And now I would like to pass the floor to our next speaker, which will be Eden. And I will introduce him shortly. Eden is a PhD in education. He is a case manager specializing in support for Cuban and Haitian humanitarian parolees. He has his degree from the University of Paris, Nanterre in France. He brings extensive experience in humanitarian services, including leadership at a Haitian organization and collaboration with international NGOs all the way to Japan. And he, of course, is dedicated to empowering refugees, advocating for equitable pathways, and building inclusive communities.
Thank you, everyone, to be here today. My presentation is about the impact of the of humanitarian parole. And the first step, I would like to let you know a little bit about the Cuban Haitian programs. And it's a program to provide direct services like public benefits, and also school enrollment and medical appointments. We're doing some assessment also, like referrals, ESL application, immigration needs, and access to health services. This program have some benefits, and also those kind of information. It's like the population, the Cuban and Haitian, they let me know the top 4 benefits they feel this program give them. The first thing, humanitarian parole offer them a legal entry and protection from violence, because they can come in USA legally, and they can come in USA and work with a work permit, because the parole allow them to apply for a work permit and contribute to the US economy. The third thing is the family reunification, because for some of them, they come here and they have some family in USA, and they're also happy to meet their family and continue to their life with them. And the fourth thing, it's the integration opportunity. They feel they can be like contribute, they are part of the community because they have some support. But also right now they have like some tweets of on cancellation, and also status lost and forced return, and they feel uncertainty, they have some fear, and they feel the program is too short. They have like some desire to have a long-term or a permanent pathways, but we know the situation, and there's some risk also to terminate the program we have right now, because of the policy. There's like they fear also some the danger, because they could be sent back to unstable or repressive environment in their country, because right now we know Haiti, there is like a bunch of problems. There's the gangs and instability, and also because of those kind of policy, they have like some emotional and mental health impact. They are always in a constant uncertainty, fear, stress, and also they feel like very vulnerable. Even you are undocumented immigrant, or you are immigrant here, you have some right. You have the right to remain silent if you are stopped by a ICE officer. You are also the right to may refuse a search if you are not arrested. This website, you can find them on this website to connect with a lawyer. As a case manager, I'm working with the Cuban and Haitian humanitarian parole. I have witnessed the gratitude and resilience. Many of them express deep appreciation to the US for providing safety and opportunity. And there is also some kind of concern because they fear of expiration. Many live in uncertainty, unsure of what will happen after the paroles end, because they don't know what's going on. barriers to employment, because when they start working and the document it's expired because they have like only 2 years, and some of them have less than 2 years, and there is no other pathways for them. And family separation also, because they will be forced to leave the United States when the parole is expired. Cuban working on the medical field like a technician, and he feel he's paying taxes, he feel very great, he feel very integrated. And there is some Asian people, a woman, a single mother, is secured housing and start volunteering, and he feel like it's like a positive thing because he can help his family in Haiti, sending money. Now, how we can address the vulnerability and advancing solution for the CHNV Parolees? They are vulnerable because of the timeline of legal status. They don't have no direct pathway to permanent residence. They are in uncertainty. They don't. Their job is affected. The mental health is affected, and the plan also it's at risk. The strategic policy solution, we can try to see if we can create a legislative pathway, expand legal services and support program. We can continue to see if we can encourage sponsorship and community engagement, and all those specific or strategic policy solution will be benefits to the US, because that will reduce help to reduce illegal migration and encourage economic contribution, and reinforces America's moral leadership, and also contribute to foreign policy. And my next slide, it will be about a call for human and strategic leadership. I think this Parole program, it's not only a humanitarian emergency response. It's more than that. It's a life saving mechanism for some people, but it's short. And we think we can continue to advocate to see if the legislator can just draft a sustainable pathway to permanent residence for eligible parolees. And like that, that can honor America's legacy and has a land of opportunity, strengthen families, communities, and industry, and also reflect value and dignity, inclusion, and shared prosperity. My conclusion will be, let us turn the temporary relief into lasting opportunity for the good of America, for the dignity of humanity, and for the future of international cooperation. And I will leave you with this Haitian proverb. It's a bite fait avancer. Merci. Thank you so much.
C'est très bien, je vous remercie. Very good that we are breaking through the walls created around our communities and between each other. As obviously, big undertakings like the ones that Mariia has been talking about can only be achieved by bringing forces together. And as I mentioned before, unfortunately, there's a lot of division that needs to be overcome in various ways, including by conversation, which is what we're doing today. We have, I think, a few minutes for any questions.
Of course, I do have a question. Thank you so much. I do have a question. What is your advice? How do I make the petition recognized to the government? What is my next step? How to address it more to them so it will be recognized and they can try to help to solve the issues for Ukrainians and for all humanitarian parolees?
if you're talking about petition, which eventually would have to be somehow converted in some kind of bill to be considered in Congress, then would have to be obviously filed by someone, and a U.S. senator would be a good way to start, and especially if somebody, a senator, if not sure what state you're in, but if one of the two senators has some basically, you know, seniority, so to speak, that could be, and who obviously who would be interested if it's about Ukraine, who supports Ukraine. So that, I believe, would be a good place to reach out to the local, either one of the two U.S. senators or to your U.S. representative, congressman or congresswoman.
I agree, but I would add a couple also of thoughts that advocacy, as we all know, is a complicated field where there are many players. I think it's important for us to build support. Right before moving forward, I think it's important to share and promote this. I personally very much support what Mariia proposes, and I hope that many people here do that as well. We as an organization are part of a couple of umbrella groups that do advocacy, annual advocacy in Congress. So I think we need to be talking to them together, and anyone who would like to participate in this initiative, and I personally would like to work on this with Mariia, please be in touch with us after this roundtable. I think that this topic should be impressed upon as important on those who will be leading immigration issues in Congress now and in the future, through our joint advocacy and through our conversations, maybe visits, joint visits to those offices.
Thank you, and I'm sending the link for my petition, and I would highly appreciate if you can support it and spread the word. I'm doing it first time.
I see in the chat that Sarah posed the question for panelists: what gives you hope in this moment? I think what gives me hope in this moment is the clients that I have come into contact with, families and individuals, and the resiliency that they demonstrate and show me in my work every day, and their capacity to learn and grow despite their circumstances is what gives me hope.
And of course, if anyone who has signed up and has been here would have any individual legal issues to discuss, I think we have a system for forwarding information to our network of lawyers, of which Vladimir, of course, is an important member. We have Basmat also from Mariia's team. She has brought such an impressive, spectacular team of folks from Atlanta, and Basmat Mahmed from New American Pathways.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I would just want to thanks everyone who organized this event and the other also virtual event and in-person event, and all the effort that you put into supporting and defending refugee and parolees. And I just, like everyone on the panel said everything that's need to be said. I just wanted to emphasize on one of the most effective form of advocacy, which is the education. And that include educating our elected officials. So I want to highly remind everyone not to feel hopeless, not to feel discouraged, but always educate you, like find opportunity to talk to your local representatives, your state representative, your federal representative, because when we educate like city councils and state legislators and congressional offices, we help them connect their policies and the votes that they put into our lives, and their work in their office to start thinking about what's really needed on the ground. So never ever stop doing that. And remember, every small advocacy will drive action, and there's multiple ways to advocate and stand up for our neighbors and communities and families and friends, which people can simply make phone calls or send email to your members of Congress and leave voicemail. Please do not stop educating even friends and families. I don't have any more to add because everything was well said, and looking forward for the next step. Thank you.
I would like to ask Eden, actually, maybe not right now, but after, I hope we all stay in touch, to find out for me, I'm very interested to know, is there any discussion within the Cuban and Haitian community leadership and organizations about some steps toward long-term status along the lines of what was done in history in the past? And maybe we could reconnect with Mariia and Eden and others interested in this multi-ethnic, multi-diaspora solution and how to pursue it effectively and intelligently. At this point, I would like just to say that we welcome anyone and everyone who is here today to also join us at our future events. Some of them will be more focused on our own communities. Some of them will be more transnational and addressed to other diasporas like we did today. Our next month, we have a couple of events in memory of Andrei Sakharov, who was the foremost advocate for human rights in the Soviet Union and internationally in the second half of the 20th century, including being the very prominent advocate for what he called the freedom to choose one's country of residence. I think very relevant to our times. And we are going to have a Sakharov Day event of mutual aid in the former Soviet communities, because his memory belongs to all of them. So I invite you to follow our events on our Facebook, on our website, and always feel free to reach to us with your ideas on collaboration. On this, I thank you all for being here today, and enjoy the rest of the evening.